I'm like, okay.
Just let me know when you're ready.
Okay, Lewis, how are we all in the
Ready?
frames?
Okay.
Let me, and I'm, yes, yes.
All right. We're going to go ahead and get started then. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. All right. So my name is Wanda Abney. I'm also known as Miss Wanda out in these streets. I'm a host of a radio show called Full Circle on 97.5 FM. And the show that I do is typically like this. It's conversation. So I'm so excited to be able to moderate this discussion for us today, talking about the featured article, "The Eight Limbs of the Black Yogi," by Jared Childress. And it was featured in the Sacramento Observer. So today we're going to have a continuation of that article in conversation and talk about what does representation look like in terms of the yoga space and etc. So we have some of our yogis here that were featured in the article. We have the person that wrote the article, the author of the article. We're just going to have some dialogue and conversation, all right? And then if we have time, we can open it up to some questions. How's that sound? Good? All right, all right. I like audience feedback, so y'all can give me some whoop whoops or whatever. It's all good. All right. All right, so before I introduce the panel, I want to introduce Jared Childress, who was the author of the article. And I want to talk a little bit about why this article was so important for you to write.
Okay, thank you, Wanda. I'm really glad to be here with everybody. Why was this article important for me to write? You know, this article, it was 10 years in the making. In 2013, actually, one of my best friends who's a yogi and a great speaker, his name is Justin Michael Williams, he asked me to write a piece about Black yogis. And I did some research and I found out about the 8 limbs of yoga. And I started to write the article, but honestly, my own life kind of took me out of that and I never finished the piece. And life happened, and that was before I was a journalist. It was like kind of a pipe dream at the time. So when I started working with the Observer, that piece came back around. I first met one of the yogis, Patisa, back in August at Self Care Sunday. We met and I was like, okay. We had a great conversation, and I kind of put her in my Rolodex. And then I met Kirsten in September at the Oak Park Black Film Festival. Put her in my Rolodex. And when it was time to write the story, I had a conversation with Kirsten, and then the rest is history. I mean, I feel like this piece is important because I also am a Black yogi. I can see myself in every single person here. Dominique, she started at Sac High doing yoga. This is one of her teachers introduced her to that. And I'm a Sac High alumni. I learned yoga because of one of my teachers at Sac High. So I've had a relationship with yoga. I noticed that we're few and far between. And yoga is much more than just the physical practice that we see. And I wanted to tap into that.
I love that. This air is not letting me be great right now. Can I have some water, please? Oh, good, thank you. Because it wasn't no coughing happening until we said go. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay, so thank you for that. I think that your perspective and the fact that you persevered in getting this information out is a testament to your commitment to not only yoga, but to the community. So thank you for that. This is a wonderful article. I want to go ahead and introduce our yogis that we have here today, and then we will go ahead and start with our discussion. So we have John Winston. Let's give John a hand. Monique Goldfried. We have Dominique Herndon. And of course, we have the mastermind behind this conversation today, Kirsten Johnston. All right. So introduce yourselves and talk about, I want to talk about what incorporating the practice of yoga means to you personally, and then we'll bring it more community-wide. Okay. So John, go ahead.
Well, John Winston, 60-year-old yogi. Um, my daughter first got me, invited me to yoga, and I continued just because I just enjoyed the feel of it. I think being diabetic, I needed some more exercise and things to help me keep my sugars on balance. So hot yoga is just it's a thing for me because when I get in there, it's work. You really have to work at it, but it also relaxes me during the class, after class. It's a hard thing to explain because when you're in 155, 115 degree yoga, it's hard to explain how you can actually relax. And so I think that's one of the main things for me, just trying to stay healthy, clear my mind for just that 1 hour, hour and a half, just for me. Nothing else. It's just all about me doing it.
Thank you for sharing, John. And we're going to talk a little bit more later on about the benefits in terms of health, because it sounds like, and from reading the article, like you came to yoga as a way to kind of help heal yourself in dealing with diabetes and maybe some other health issues. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. All right, Dominique. Oh, I'm sorry. Monique.
But you know it's cute because it's like
It's like you guys are the twins.
this is yoga.
I'm Monique Goldfrey, and I've been practicing yoga for like 20 something years. And initially it was just, and I'm 44 years old. It was just traditional yoga, not hot yoga. And then I'd say about 5 years ago, which ironically was at Uplift, which is where John practices, because my brother practices there, said, let me try hot yoga. And it was something about the vinyasa flow style, which is one breath, one movement. So you're moving, breath to movement. And then because of where I live, which is Gold River, I decided to try a studio in Folsom, which was called Zuda. Now it's called Yoga Nyla. And from there, I decided to become a yoga instructor. And for me, and also Yoga Musas, teaching outdoors in the park. For me, yoga is like, it's 75 minutes of just, I can be with myself. I call it the intimate date with myself. I can just be with my thoughts, my body, and just be. And it's very rare that we in our society get to do that. So.
Thank you very much. All right. Tom.
Yes. So, like it was kind of spoken about a little bit earlier, I came into yoga during my advisory class during high school. My advisory teacher came in, she turned off all the lights and was like, okay, everybody, we're going to meditate. And I was looking at everybody and everybody was looking at me. It was like, what are we doing, But what I learned in that moment was she was trying to create a space where we could simply just breathe and be aware of where we were and what our body was telling us. And so from then on, she was the one actually, her name is Jana, who would take me to different yoga classes in Sacramento. So she would kind of just take me, we would go, and what I realized while we were doing the yoga was it was giving me a space to be more aware of myself, like Monique was saying. It was giving me time to be a little bit more reflective because I was going through a lot of different transitions. So I needed some time where I could simply just be still and be reflective.
All right. And I want to talk about the impact when we get further in the conversation as a young person coming into this space. What does that look like? So we'll talk about that also. All right, Kirsten.
Well, y'all read my yoga journey, and it came by way of violence because that's what my yoga was for me at first. But finding the right style, finding the right person to welcome me, it turned what I experienced in my body, which was a chronic pain, chronic illness, into something that I could live. And yoga, that's what yoga taught me, through the physical practice of meeting me where I was in time, and it teaches me that again and again and again. then it taught me and it gave me a more just whole way to live. And so that's why I absolutely love this article, because it just doesn't really focus on just the physical practice. I think we can all agree that that part that I connected with, that gave me a more sense of acceptance and love and a way to move my body that wasn't violence. Oh my God, it was the best thing for me. So I just love that one.
And we're going to talk a little bit more about that violence that you speak of, because I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that violence is being expected to do moves that your body can't do, is not able to do at that moment. Okay. All right. All right. And then we have another yogi joining us. Go ahead and introduce yourself, and how did you come into yoga?
I'm Leon Willis. I came into yoga, officially came into yoga in 2013. Looking for a way to lose weight without running. And so power vinyasa became my thing. And then in practicing yoga, I was like, oh, let me take the yoga teacher training so I could learn how to do this properly. And then halfway through the training, I was like, I got this! and the rest is history.
Yeah, thank you. Lose weight without running. Yeah. That's probably the line that I'll take away from today's whole thing, because I feel that. I feel that all the way in my bones. But it's more than that. It's that connection that you feel. And I feel like a result of being in tune with yourself, the weight just drops off. Yeah. Would you agree with that?
Yes. I learned in yoga how to eat better, or because of the practice and the encouragement of not to eat 2 hours prior, then it was like, oh, okay, well, I can't eat big, so okay, that changes things. And then it was like, after practice, you're like, you don't want a big steak or a pasta meal or something to that effect. So now I'm like balancing. The yoga taught me how to balance my life in more ways than one.
That's good.
And, you know, I'm sure like everyone else, we all came in with a mission, you know, and then you learn to surrender, and you get more than what you asked for.
Oh, I love that. I love that, Leon. Thank you so much. I want to dive right into this. So the article is about representation in yoga, right? And I've heard from a couple of people on the panel. Monique mentioned that she is in Gold River, the Folsom area. Not a lot of folks look like us. So how do you build community in, I'm gonna call it other spaces? How do you build community, Monique?
So my first thought immediately was Yoga Moves Us, because for Yoga Moves Us, I'm at, McClatchy Park in Oak Park. I'm at McKinley Park right over here. And then sometimes I'll be in, the Elk Grove site. So you're moving around to different parks. So what starts to happen is you are seeing people of color practicing yoga, and then when that curiosity comes up, they're like, well wait, where are you? Are there other yogis? Like, how often can I practice? And then that's when the questions come up, and then you start to answer those questions, and then it just opens up that space of like, oh, okay, so it's not as quote unquote scary, because I get it. I'm gonna speak for myself as a black woman stepping into a space where no one looks like me. Even though I'm confident, it can be scary. It can be a scary thing. And so to be able to say, you know what? And that's where the yoga comes in. I'm safe. I'm okay. I'm gonna get through this. And even though everyone doesn't look like me, or even one person doesn't look like me, I'm here for the benefit of connection.
I like that. That sounds like, and I'm just gonna say, the 8th or the 5th limb of yoga. I hope I'm saying this right. Pratyahara? Yeah. Pratyahara? Okay. And that is, thank you, John, whispering that in my ear. Sensory withdrawal and distractions, no distractions from the outside world. Incorporating that in a way where even though you're in a space where people don't look like you, where you don't feel comfortable and you may not feel that safe, practicing that fifth limb of being able to tune out everything and to go within. Talk about, so I want to open the same question up to the rest of the panel in terms of building community in other spaces. And how do you assure, Monique mentioned, meeting people and letting them know it's okay. But how do you encourage folks? Because, we like to say, and when I say we, I mean Black people like to say, that ain't for me. I went there and it wasn't for me. There was nobody that looked like me, and they want to tune it out and don't really think about the benefits of the practice. So opening it up to the panel more, how do you build community and encourage people that the representation is there and growing, and how do we get the community more involved?
Um,
Well, for me, I think I grew up that way. I've always, I grew up in a community where I was the only person like me. So going into Uplift, or at the time it was Oak Grove Yoga, I had no problem. So I would feel great telling you from looking from the outside, come on in, because for me it's just like a natural thing to do. But I do understand. I understand that there are people that look like me that would not feel comfortable in that situation. But once you get into the class and you realize it is about you, not about the other 40 people around you, and you're able to focus on you and get the benefits for you, it's not a problem. For me, like I said, I was grew up that way, so it wasn't a problem coming in. But I would honestly tell you that it's for you and not everybody around you. So that would be my part to it. So I have no problem with
Yeah, encouraging that
it.
individual
Encouraging
journey.
individually, it's for you.
Yeah.
And hopefully they welcome me. If not, that's their loss.
I was gonna say, I'm with Yoga Moses, and my whole, just before I became with Yoga Moses, I had a thing or a saying that there's a connection in the reflection. If I don't see something reflected that looks like me or that I can identify, and yoga is all about connection or union, then that is the practice right there. So with Yoga Buddhas, or even in my own practice, I made it my own personal mission to be reflective of who I am as a Black woman, as a differently able person, as someone who is in a different sized body that doesn't look like a typical yoga body. And then when I was invited to be part of Yoga Blueses, that was something that was very important to me. And I onboard all of our new teachers because I want to make sure that they know that this is what we are. We are for being a community practice, that we are offering yoga that sometimes is not accessible to everyone because they don't see that reflection, or it may be something that they may not be able to afford. So it can be expensive, let's face it, out there, or you just don't vibe with the community because this is a community and it's outside and it's in the park. You really feel that you're part and connected with that. And I worked hard to recruit other folks of color, of other different sizes or different intersections, so that everyone could see themselves reflected by who's up there, and that's a mirror reflection. And you break down that, you meet people where they are, then that invites you to the practice. It is a personal practice, but to get up and show up in that, you want to make sure that we're safe. That's one thing about being. I heard Monique say that you want to feel safe, that you feel that you're included, and I think that's what I appreciate about Yoga Moses, is that we're creating that environment of welcoming all to the practice.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's good. I want to take that same conversation and flip it a little bit, and I want to go to the two men on the panel, because while we're talking about this in terms of inclusivity and representation, usually yoga spaces look like all women, right? Or mostly women. So how do you, the two gentlemen on the panel, take that another level in building community with men, letting them know that this practice is for them as well?
Well, if I may, inserts, but no. In the beginning of my teaching, I took my practice directly to the prison, and I worked primarily with men of color. And she was like, I just got this new gift, let me share it with you. And it was fantastic. I volunteered there for 2 years straight, and like the guys just, they kept showing up, and some of the toughest guys were like, you know, shaky on the mat. That's what was really great about it. It was like I got to see the reflection, like you were saying. I was like, I've been to prison before. I understand what it's like to want to have something different from the outside, but not have access to it. So being able to show up for those guys in that space and deliver that to them, for them, and with them really gave me a sense of connection with community, because up until that time, I wasn't around a lot of people of color in my daily life. So once a week, I get to settle into that space, and it was so nourishing for myself and my heart. And since then, you know, I joined Yoga Moves Us, and I teach in the park, primarily at Oak Park or Tahoe Park. Willing to teach other parks, but I try to stay focused in that section. Hopefully people who look like us will come and show up where they feel safe to be.
Thank you. Thank you. Did you have anything to add?
I'd like to add that, you know, just talking to guys in general, so they understand that it's not just for women, and a lot of times as guys we want to be so hot yoga, Jared, let you know that it's some days you gotta, it's challenging, and to be honest, just to see some of the women that are in there just going at it, it's motivating for me. But to let my guy friends know that, you know, you can do this, and it's more than, you know, it's. I always go back to it's about you when you go in there, and you know, that's what I would add.
Thank you. I think that's important conversation to encourage, because the benefits just are so plentiful in terms of seeing life in a different perspective, in terms of the calm that you bring because you're going inward and being able to focus on the things that motivate. And even when you have struggles, I would imagine, being able to have a different perspective on those inwardly when you're doing the practice. I want to take the same conversation and take it in another direction with Dominique, in terms of being a young person. You were in high school when you were introduced to meditation and yoga. How did that, as a young person, because again, we're talking about representation and inclusion on all different fronts, but as a young person being introduced to this, what was it that grabbed you, and how do you work with other young people about, or talk to them about the practice of yoga? Because they may think, oh, that's for my mom or my auntie or whatever, you know, and they may not think that it's for them.
So I would want to say first, it was my senior year of high school that my advisory teacher introduced me to meditation. And I would say it was a transitional period in my life, because I was going away to school. I was going to Xavier University. And so what really grabbed me to be a part of the practice was I was going through my own journey of self-discovery. I was trying to figure out who I was. I was trying to figure out, who am I as a California native going to New Orleans, Louisiana. I don't have no family there. I'm making friends. I'm in this major transition. So the practice called to me, and it stuck with me because it was dedicated time and space for me to go in, for me to be self-reflective, for me to be aware of who I was and where I was. So I really held on to the practice as much as I could, because I needed that for myself. I needed that sense of foundation. I needed that sense of being grounded in something bigger than me. And the practice, not only the meditation part, but when you're in the flow, like Monique was saying, your body is really doing the movements. You're not so much in your mind, but you're really connecting to that one breath, one movement. So it gave me the freedom just to kind of get out of my head and be in my body. So when I'm talking to other young people, I'm telling them the benefits of it. You know, I'm telling them my experience. I'm sharing with them from a very kind of personal space, and I'm being vulnerable. I'm being transparent, because that's where you find the deepest connection. If I'm vulnerable about where I am, I'm vulnerable about why I got into the practice, then we can connect on that level. So I think being intentional about being vulnerable and being honest I think a lot of our young people, they want to be seen, they want to be heard, and they want to feel like they're seen and heard and they're respected, and they have a place to be connected at, and they don't always have that. So when you approach them, you got to come from a different type of space. So that's the space I'm trying to come from.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. And just to have those. We can give her a hand. That's okay. I think that's beautiful. So that was so eloquently said, and I loved how you recognized in your own young life that you were going into this new experience of going to college, and you needed something to hold on to that will help you get through that. So many young people don't have that level, bless you, of self-awareness.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to see that you had that, and by having those conversations with young people will hopefully enable them to come to that same perspective and realization for themselves. Yeah, yeah, so good, so good. I want to talk about and follow up from the conversation earlier about the health benefits of yoga. I think one of the reasons why a lot of our community don't embrace yoga, and it goes back to your journey of not feeling like my body can do those moves, or not feeling like or not being able to because of ailments or things that have happened, and not being embraced in a way by the instructor or the yogi to modify moves for yourself. Mm-hmm. So you started with your first yoga experience was not good. They didn't have any grace to help you do the moves properly. Mm-hmm. For your body type and for the things that were going on with you. Mm-hmm. How do you incorporate and help people that are different bodied, body shape or other ailment, embrace the practice and encourage them to embrace the practice? And two parts, how did that improve your health, if it has? And what are some of the benefits that you found personally?
Okay, so how do I encourage people to come to the practice?
I know it's a lot.
How do I?
We'll circle back.
I think first of all, it starts with permission and welcoming. So I think the first experience that I had was not welcoming. It was not inviting, and as you said, I wasn't seen, I wasn't heard, none of that. And I think it's important, especially if you're going to a class, to set that up, to set that welcoming permission, that environment of, you are here, I'm glad you're here, I welcome you as you are to this practice. Because every time you come to the mat, every time you come to the practice, it's as you are right there in that moment. So to set that tone right there, and then sharing other options that are available. I always say it's not about how the pose looks, it's about how it feels. So how does it feel in my body? And if it feels like harm, if it feels like violence, if it feels like something that does not feel good, I'm not going to have you do, don't do it. Don't do it. But come to a point where you're able to modify it or to even change it so that you can, every individual can have that experience. So I do that for myself by just, like I said, tapping inward, noticing how this feels in my body. And if it doesn't feel, there's certain things that I absolutely cannot do. I don't care what the person is up there saying. I know that I should not be doing that. And I think sometimes as beginners, they think that they look to this person up there as a person of authority, as a person that, well, he said do this, and so I'm not doing it wrong. The fact that you showed up, you are doing it. The fact that you are breathing, you are doing it. If you're doing it wrong, that means you're doing it not with the intention and not with the awareness of, does this feel good in my body? So coming back to that, how does this feel? How does this feel good? I don't care what it looks like, but if I can feel breath, if I can feel length, if I can feel stretch, if I can feel movement, then that is a body. It may not look the same on my body as it looks on everyone else, but this is what I encourage everyone to do. And then all throughout my practice, I sprinkle. If you can't, if this doesn't feel good, well, maybe try it out like this. So there's all the permission to be curious and to adapt and change the practice. But I encourage everybody, you don't have, I mean, like, if we all played the same note, it would just be so boring. Let everybody play their body and play their instrument and play this beautiful movement as it should be from their own experience.
I just want to piggyback on that before you move forward is when you talk about we're looking at the yogi as the person that is the authority, it takes us away from that inward reflection.
Right.
Yeah. It takes us away from that inward reflection. So now we're so busy looking at how they're doing. And I can say this because I'm guilty of doing that in times that I have practiced yoga myself and have felt bad about myself because I wasn't doing it the way they did it and didn't have the forethought to look inward.
No. I love the orchestra, so that's what I'm thinking. I geek out on instruments and orchestra and all that. But I always liken a yoga class to, I am the conductor. Do you ever see a conductor with any instrument? No. He is just telling you how, or suggesting how to play the notes. Sometimes he'll draw it out of you with more emphasis, and sometimes it's soft and light. So everybody in that class is playing the instrument, and nobody's playing, some people are playing the same notes, but sometimes you've got different instruments playing different sounds all together, coming together, creating this symphony. So that's what yoga class. I am just a conductor. Everybody is there to play their instrument in a way, you know, when you hit a bad note, don't do that. So anyway, the benefits, of course, it shows me every day how to be in my body. I lived with chronic pain. Sometimes I have flare-ups, sometimes I don't. I know there's different types of practices that I can do. But going back to the article, the 8 limbs, all the things off of the mat that it has taught me, the acceptance and the love and the breath and the concentration and the distraction, those are also there. And it also teaches me I can rest when I need to. I mean, like we always think that yoga sometimes, I mean, I do love a power hot yoga, but you know, like I said, it's not much damn. But we can also rest. We give ourselves also that permission to be in yoga nidra and yin and restorative. So there's so many different styles of yoga. If you want to concentrate just on the physical, on the asana part, but there's so many different ways to be in their practice. And for me, I use a lot of support with the props. You see me, I'm like a kid in a candy store. I'll drag all my props with me because that's just who I am. So I support the practice.
Yeah. And I think it's important to mention because all of the bodies that look different, that don't feel that they can be accepted or they can do the practice, that's why I really wanted to talk about that and the use of props and things that will allow you to do what your body allows you to do, nothing more, nothing less. So do what your body can do. And I do love a good block.
And I was say one thing about, and a lot of people come to the props, but it's a less than, like I'm not doing it right. But I always say props are like the seasoning. You know, like you always go to a restaurant and sometimes you have to ask for salt and pepper. Well, it's better if it's already at your table and you can just sprinkle on what you want at the time that you need it. So you know how to season your practice. You know how to do your flow, your body. So I like to have my props just in case I need a little bit of spice or a little bit of something to add to my experience.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add a little bit or piggyback off that. When I started teaching in the community and I made it my mission and my vision that I wanted to teach bodies in the community, people who may not have never done yoga before, but I really wanted to plant that seed. What I had to do is I had to deconstruct some of the things I learned in teacher training. You know, I had to go back and I had to say, okay, if my vision and my goal is to reach people in the community that have never done yoga a day in their life, I cannot teach how I would teach studio bodies. I can't just call a movement and think that their body is going to move. I can't just expect you to do this without a block, right? So I had to really look at the people I'm trying to teach and be like, okay, Dominique, you have to deconstruct. You have to look at people's body. You have to say, this is the modification. Do you need a block? Doesn't all have to look the same. Does it feel good in your body? I had to do that work. And I think sometimes everybody doesn't do that work. So you can get into a class and you don't feel safe because you're not aware. They're not aware of what other people are coming into the class with. So you really got to do that work to kind of deconstruct it.
That is such a great point. You can give that a hand. That's a good, yes. That is a great point. And let's shift over into the decolonization of yoga in terms of the teaching and how we're bringing it to to your community or to our community in a different way. The separation of the lessons, the teaching to the real world actual practice. Does anyone want to say anything more about that? Because that we could spend a whole afternoon just on that alone, right?
Well, the thing that struck me what you just said is the real world practice. So I was just having this conversation with my mother before I came over about yoga has taught me how to respond instead of how to react.
Yes.
That's good.
Right?
That's good.
Because
Yes,
it gives
that's
you that
good.
moment of wait, hold on. Let me process this. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? Okay, now I respond. As opposed to, and we're all guilty of like we'll react. And so it's like now I take what I learned on the mat because usually whatever's happening on my yoga mat is showing up in my real life.
That's good.
And so I can take that lesson and go, oh, it's showing up at work. Oh, it's showing up at home. Oh, it's showing up with my 2 kids and my husband. Oh, okay. And so it's like I can take that real world lesson and now apply it to like actual life.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. That's good. Anyone else have any comments on that whole separation of the teaching, the learning to be a yogi in theory versus the practice, the real world practice of yoga?
I mean, like the practice, when we go to a class, either a studio class, yoga moves us, you get your mat, I don't even know the dimensions of mat, and you're there for 1 hour. But your life is 24, you got 23 other hours, other than the time you're sleeping, to live. And so, like you said, all the lessons that you learn there in the movement, I went to a meditation, they said every thought, every idea, everything that you experience comes through the body. That's the beauty of yoga. It comes through the body. In the experience of moving and what you experience on that 1 hour, through the body and how it shows up off the mat, there's the continuation of the practice and the yoga of the benefit of everything that we do. So yeah, and I think people realize that we may trick them into like, you're just gonna come in and move your body and do all this, but it shows up. It has to show up. Yeah. It shows up. So that's the benefit. Just like I said, getting people to welcome them by. I'm like, this whole conversation is bringing me joy, but just like Sacramento is winning all around because we have representation now. And so we are here to say that we're doing it either in practice or either teaching it to invite other people in the community to say, yeah, this is a practice for you. So,
yeah, it's great. Yeah. Anyone else have any comments?
Good question again.
It was talking about the instruction of yoga, like learning the instruction versus the real life practice of it, and just kind of balancing those two worlds. And I think for you, it seems like there is so much because of the population that you have worked with, in terms of what like Dominique said, what she learned and what she's doing. You have to adjust.
Yes.
So
the way I make it relatable to others is by bringing hip hop music. I make it kind of upbeat. I make it fun. I make it friendly, and like a lot of things in life, you gotta learn first, so you could find the information, right? It's like, I don't know about you guys, but I believe like that was our information. These other people are teaching it, so I gotta show up to get it, and then once I get it, now I can reframe it. And so yeah, I'm like, okay, cool. I got my information. I'm gonna take it over here, present it over this music, and be like, hey, let's rock out. And everybody's like, oh, hey, I could do this.
Yeah, that's good.
Bring it home.
One more question, and then we can open it up. Life off the mat. How does yoga, and Monique, you already had mentioned what yoga looks like for you off the mat. It's that noticing and being able to respond differently. So I'll ask the rest of the panel, what does yoga look like for you off the mat? How does it show up for you in your everyday life?
I think handling everyday life, um, grandparent, husband, father, obviously. It's just, you know, you come with all kinds of things at you, and just being able to take them one step at a time is one of the things that you learn from being able to breathe through it. Like you said earlier, think, you know, not react, but just being there. So I think that's part of yoga that's helped me. Just being able to breathe through it and know that it's the journey. Life is a journey. You take them one day, one step at a time, and I think that's what I've learned from it.
Okay.
Rick?
I'm always going to take it back to the meditation part for me and staying in tune with myself. I think the practice just reminds me, whether I'm on the mat or off the mat, that you got to be in tune with yourself. Mm-hmm. You got to be self-aware. You got to know where you are so you can journey through forward, right? So always being able to say, okay, I know what I can do, whether I'm on the mat or off the mat. I can sit down, I can tap in and get aware about how I'm feeling and where I want to go.
In tune part. I think for me, yoga shows up every moment that I'm alive because I'm breathing, and it really shows up when I'm aware that I'm breathing, and then what's going on with the breath, all the thoughts, the feelings, sensations, the releases, all of that. And I think at any given moment, everybody is always doing yoga, but it's like because we're always breathing. I mean, I hope. But it's when we, like for me, when I'm actually really intentionally connected with that breath, so then maybe I'm holding my breath, or maybe maybe I'm in pain. And so that gives me like, okay, if I'm in pain, do I need to power through, or can I stop? Can I take care of my needs? Can I rest? Or maybe I feel like I'm strong. Okay, I'm going to do all of these things. So all of those things, I think the yoga offer than that is that's where it comes in for me, is like, oh yeah, feeling that breeze, feeling my body.
I notice yoga off the mat often when I'm working as an artist, painting, doing like long strokes, and my body's traveling, and I end up, in this warrior one type feet position. Whoa! Right? It's just like, I get this long stroke that's going from here to about 2 feet that way, and then again, it's just like multiple passes, and it's just like, I got this, easy peasy. There's so much repetition in some of the art that I do, and also in the working with youth, in teaching them some of the things that I learned in yoga, but not as yoga to them, challenging them to balance on one leg or on one foot, or hold your breath and move like this, or exhale and move like that. That's always fun, because at the end of it, when they sit down, they're like, wow, I feel different. Mm-hmm. It's cool. Yeah. It's cool. Just hang here and be quiet. And that's the best part, the knowledge kind of unlocks them a little bit. But yeah, yoga off the mat for me shows up a lot during work.
Good. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the panel?
I have a comment.
Okay.
So when you talk about yoga off the mat, I just want to tell a brief story about watching one of your panelists move in yoga off the mat. She was about to start a class, and she had a lot of stuff to get out and get set up, and time was ticking, and there was an interesting accident that happened. I'm gonna have to take her position, like I'm gonna have to have her back, right? I'm ready, right? She held such a space of peace and flexibility. And before it was over, I watched her transform the air around her and that gentleman. He was, oh, thank you, I'm so sorry. He had humbled himself. He was bowing down. I'm looking like, what the fuck just happened? Whoa! So when you say yoga off the mat, for me, I'm seeing it in practical ways. And what's also exciting is finding that some of the small movements that I do at home to get myself centered, I see them being done in yoga classes, and then I feel special because I'm like, oh, I do that. Oh, I've been doing that, right? So yeah, so that's it. I had to say that.
Thank you for sharing, and that's the power of the practice, and that's the power of community too, right? Of one drop, just think about the ocean. The one drop makes a ripple, and so the being in tune with the practice for yourself and how it just permeates out to others, right?
Yes.
Any other questions? Yes.
I have a question for the panel. So mainly for the women. I'm sorry, men.
Hey.
Mainly for the women. So with everything going on in the world, Black women have it just so hard. How do you guys stay sane and centered off the mat when you don't have yoga? Like when you don't feel like doing it, what are you doing for your self-care? Because I feel like what Sis was saying about, like, I know those moves, like I got the boat pose down, I could do those.
Right.
Like, okay, I know that stuff, but off the mat, what's a way for you guys to have self-care?
So this is where I think we're going to respond similar.
Okay, go ahead.
I find stillness.
Yes.
Because, I mean, the world is coming at us, right? I mean, from all these different directions. And there's something about finding stillness. It's like now I can actually go, okay, is that true? Whatever I'm thinking, you know? And then I start to like look inward, like, well, where's that coming from? That feeling, like, where's that coming from? I heard something the other day, and I thought, okay, this connected with me. It said, "Show me how you avoid stillness, and I'll show you how you avoid how you have disruptive patterns."
Mm-hmm.
And I went, okay. So for me, it's like if I can just find some stillness, now it's a game changer.
Yes.
So how about for you?
We got the stillness part down, so I ain't gonna say nothing else about the stillness part, but I would also say being in community with people, or it could be women who just uplift you and affirm you. You know, there's a lot of messaging and a lot of people who will not affirm you, who will tear you down. But I think when you surround yourself with people who will just uplift you, it'll do something to your spirit. You know, do something to your soul, do something to your mind when somebody will come and speak life into you. So just making sure that you're surrounded and you're particular about who you share your space with, because I know sometimes in our efforts to be out and to be doing stuff and having fun, then we also make ourselves more susceptible to other people's energy. So sometimes you have to be particular about who you have around you. And you might have to say, like, girl, I can't be with you on that one because, like, I need to be uplifted. I need to be around people who are going to speak life into me. I need that for myself. And the boundary is myself right now. So just having some boundaries and being around people who love you, like I love you.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna be completely opposite from these two, because you think I'm a yogi and I'm all peace, love, peace, and chicken grease. And I pretty much I am that person, that center, that, calms. I give the best hugs. But for me, self-care means release. Because of that place that I naturally stay, I choose violence when I need to release self-care. I choose release. I choose to watch the most something that I can't even understand in English. If there's I don't like car chases, but if somebody is like, getting injured, it won't be okay. I'd be okay with that. There's a lot of action. Screaming at the ocean, which I absolutely love, is self-care. Going to water, being in nature.
Yeah.
I do a lot of other things that are self-care, but I just want to keep this PG because I just like being out in nature and just absorbing the sun and being in that's self-care for me. Release. freedom is self-care. So and surrounding yourself by people who allow you to be that, to allow you to give this release, and allow you know to have that trusted community around you, either to sit with you. There's this one poem about Winnie the Pooh that I absolutely love, Winnie the Pooh and Piglet, and how Winnie the Pooh was having a hard day, and Piglet just sat by Pooh in silence and allowed Winnie the Pooh to have this and work through his feelings and his thoughts. And so I think sometimes I'm Winnie the Pooh and sometimes I'm Piglet, but to have that support of that women or silence or release or whatever it is, that's my self-care.
Yeah.
Whatever, to know that I can do that also.
Yeah. I just want to piggyback on what you said too, is giving yourself permission to have that space, to be intentional, giving yourself, because a lot of times we think that we have to do because of someone else. But when you actually are reflective, when you're internal, when you're finding that stillness, and you're surrounding yourself with people that have like energy or like-minded or whatever, and giving yourself permission to separate yourself from people that don't, and know that it's okay. And sometimes it's not going to be easy, and sometimes feelings are going to be hurt, etc. But knowing that you're doing what's best for yourself, that's the number one thing. Because if you're not looking out for yourself, then what does the other stuff matter? If you're not happy, if you're not fulfilled, if you're not being intentional with your thoughts or your actions, if you can't live with yourself because you're doing things that don't serve you. So giving yourself permission to be intentional about how you want to show up and the people that you want to show up for you. All right. All right. And also listening to Full Circle every Saturday, because we have conversations like this every Saturday, 10 to 12 on 97.5. Let me just tell you that. Are there any other questions? Yes. Yeah.
I just had a question for the panel in general. I know that you spoke on inviting people into a space that they aren't familiar with and allowing them to engage with it and take something away from it for themselves. Is there any particular method that you use to help people overcome their imposter syndrome? Or
I get imposter syndrome all the time. Me too. And I was reminded by my mentor, who's not here today. Let's give it up for the people that went. First of all, the ones that are not here.
Yes.
Angie Franklin, for yoga, and the white. Yes. The other ones that are not here. But Angie reminded me this. I was at an event, nervous, and then it was like coming up right here, and I'm like, oh, what am I doing? And I reminded myself of this, and it says, this is what you do. You wouldn't be invited if this is not what you do. You would not be chosen and asked to be there if this is what you do. Remind yourself this is what you do. Be in that, affirm that, and then do it.
There.
Anyone else?
I would just say, so a lot of times, so I'm a high school teacher and administrator, and I'll have students that, high levels of, they're either nervous or anxiety, and oftentimes I'll say, you know what, because I'm very aware that saying, hey, just close your eyes and relax. First of all, a lot of people, they may not feel safe to close their eyes. And just tell someone to relax is almost like telling them what to do. So I'll say, you know what, if nothing else, just put one hand over your heart, one hand over your belly, and just feel your breath. And just wherever that goes, wherever that takes you. If it takes you to closing your eyes, if it takes you to just being able to just connect with your body, because oftentimes it's when we're not connected in our body is when we start to get in our head. And so that's what I mean.
That's good.
I would say, to answer your question, depending on the person I'm speaking to, but if it was a person of color, I would gently remind them that colonization brings that imposter syndrome on because they took the information from us and now they're bringing it back. So it may feel funny at first that you're in this space and learning this thing or about to be, but this is full circle. So settle into that, let it happen. And if it were someone else who were struggling with it, you know, refer to the breath, settle in, just be here now, not in your mind somewhere else, about what someone else thinks about you, or it could be just be here with yourself where you're at.
All right, so I want to again give it up to the panel. Leon Willis, he's a certified power vinyasa instructor at Moore's Martial Arts of Sacramento. Monique Goldfried, certified yoga instructor at Yoga Nyla in Folsom. John Winston Yogi at Uplift Therapeutic Movement and Wellness in Elk Grove. Excuse me, Dominique Herndon, certified vinyasa and prenatal yoga instructor at Functional Elements in Oak Park. And of course, come on, Air, we almost done. Kirsten Johnson, president of Yoga Moves Us. Let's give the panel a hand. We also have to give another hand to the author of the article, Jared Childress. Yes. Let's give Jared a hand. Yes. If you have not read the article yet, guess what? You can get an observer right there inside of Drip Espresso. Let's thank Drip Espresso for hosting this event as well. All right. Yes.
Our photographer and videographer, Louis.